On to number 7, which is environmental provisions. Get into it.
So this is a pretty novel one, and I discussed it with some of our litigation partners, and there are issues with the argument, but nonetheless, it is something that you could throw at the wall and see if it sticks. And as they've said to me, judges are human, and if these cases end up in front of a judge, they're going to know what was happening, and are they going to like the landlord trying to throw you out? So the environmental provision, depending on the language in your lease, could say that if there is a contaminant in the premises that causes you to be unable to operate, that your rent should abate. Again, you don't have to pay rent if there's a contaminant in your space. So if the language is favorable in your environmental provision, and I've seen a lot of leases where it is, you could take the position that the virus is a contaminant, that we've been told by the government we can't operate because of that contaminant, and now our rent should not have to be paid because the environmental provision says that our rent will abate if we're unable to operate because of a contaminant within our premises.
Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of these things, like these provisions, the condemnation, the environmental provisions, would have had to been in your lease agreement to begin with, correct?
Yeah, all of these provisions would have needed to been in your lease. There are what we call common law defenses and provisions, such as frustration of purpose and impossibility, which is essentially similar types of arguments where you can no longer operate because it's impossible because the government told you you can't operate, or the purpose of the lease was to operate a restaurant, and we've been told that we can't operate a restaurant here. So the purpose of the lease was frustrated. And those common law remedies don't have to be in the lease. However, the specific provisions for condemnation and eminent domain in the next couple that we're about to discuss, you have to look at those the wording in each lease, because every provision is different. Even those where we have the same landlord in multiple locations, sometimes they have different attorneys negotiating for the landlord, so the documents look a little bit differently, and every word matters.
If you enjoyed this video, please help us out. You can do it by liking, sharing, subscribing, and hitting that bell icon. It really helps out. And don't forget, there's a complete archive of every episode with show notes at restaurantunstoppable.com.